Marty Cohn, and welcome to episode 20 of PR Benefits, a show that explores the role of public relations in the COVID-19 era. I've been a PR practitioner for over 45 years, helping a wide array of organizations successfully communicate their messages to targeted audiences. I mistakenly thought that 9/11 would be the watershed event in my lifetime. Communicating in the aftermath of that tragic event was challenging. Then came the global economic downturn in 2008 with more lessons in crisis communications. However, 12 years later, we have the coronavirus pandemic, and new challenges in uncharted waters have emerged. My guest today is Robb Yagmin, president of PSPR in Kansas City, Missouri. Robb is a seasoned media relations pro, adept at securing memorable and effective media coverage. He paid me to say that.
I was going to say, you took that right off the website.
Thank you very much. That's what I go for. Having spent 17 years as a television reporter, he established PSPR in 2006. When you go on his website and read all the wonderful things about Robb from his clients, they all agree that Robb understands the inner workings of all types of media. Actually, it says that on your website too. Welcome, Robb.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, so Robb, I really appreciate you coming on. And as I was telling you, I like to look up and read about folks who are coming on the show. One thing that was missing from your background for me was, how did you get started in public relations?
It was kind of by mistake, actually. To be completely honest with you, I'm a military brat, and I lived all around the world when I was a kid. And my dad was in the Air Force, and we were in Germany. He was in intelligence, and he always used to say that he knew things before other people knew things, and things he couldn't tell me or he'd have to kill me. And so there was a portion of my life when I was in, I think, 1st to 5th grade, that my mom would give me a quarter every day, and I would run downstairs to the newspaper box, and I would buy a newspaper, and I would read as much as I could before he woke up in the morning, because just for that brief amount of time, I knew more than he did, or at least I thought I did. Now, I say that, and that's true, but it didn't last as long as I like to think it did, because usually they go back to the comics. You remember the comics, right? And read the comics. But so for a brief amount of time, I knew more than he did. And I knew right around that time, and I got a little bit older, but in 8th grade, I knew for a fact that I wanted to change the world. I wanted to be an anchor on the network news, like that guy right there. That's Peter Jennings. That's my idol right there. It's me and Peter Jennings. And I wanted to do what he did, because I would have this awesome responsibility and opportunity to tell stories, And so I knew I wanted to do that. And the place to go to school for that is the Missouri School of Journalism, And so I was going to school there. Went to school there. I got my bachelor in journalism. And as the nomadic way that journalists used to, not anymore, but the way it used to be, I went from Columbia, Missouri, went to Boise, Idaho, right out of school, graduated on the 15th of December, 1974, and started on the 19th, worked 26 straight days at the ABC station in Boise, got fired after 4 months for not progressing fast enough, despite my $14,400 annual salary. Came back to Topeka. I know, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of ramen, right? Came to Topeka, worked here for 2.5 years, worked the morning show, did that for, got up at midnight, worked until 2 for 2.5 years, went to Grand Rapids, in this part of over here, Michigan, Grand Rapids, St. Louis, then came to Kansas City at 2 different stints. And so the reason I say it became an accident is I had 2 boys in pretty quick succession and had to go part-time. I was working the morning show. And so in between afternoon naps and insomnia and stuff, I had a friend this is actually kind of funny. She was an ex-reporter as well. She had a friend who had a car, like a NASCAR car, but like a AAA car, so like the Busch Series car. And it wasn't sponsored by anybody. It wasn't sponsored by like M&M's or Miller High Life or something like that. It was called the Fan First car. And what it would do is you would get sponsorships from grandpa or friends or whatever, and they would put your name on the car. It's a Marty Cohn on this car that would go around the track a million times, about 100 miles an hour. And as you know, that was enough for a journalist to go, huh, really? And then you got to kick that door down, right? You got to kick it down and say, this is up, and then you support all the facts and stuff. And so I said, I can help you with that. And I kid you not, ESPN2, USA Today, right out of the chutes. And I was like, media relations, easy. PRs for chumps, it's easy, right? And so then that's how it started. It was on accident. And I had a couple of friends that had wives that work at agencies that were like, hey, we don't do a lot of that. Do you mind calling people on it? And I'm like, really, it's just me pitching me. I mean, I know the inner workings. I understand the TV jargon. I understand how it works in the newsroom. And so, yeah, it was really just me pitching me. And if there is somebody on the other end of that phone that knows that you understand their plight, they give you an extra 5 seconds. And that's really how it happened. So I'm not from the agency mold. I'm not politically correct. I've got zero filter, but I have this extra skill set that a lot of people don't either like doing or aren't good at. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to be successful because I've got people and clients that are, you know, good people that are happy to work with.
Great. Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad that you came over to the dark side.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, and media relations is an important part of PR. So all good, all good. So Rob, I want to take you back in time to pre-COVID-19. So it's about 5-6 months.
6 months ago, right? Yeah, great.
Yeah, right. Anyway, when you think back on that, what do you consider some highlights of your pre-COVID-19 career? Pre-COVID-19.
You know, when I was in TV, I would make a point of every day handing out a business card, no matter to who it was. Didn't make a difference. And I would always say the same thing. Listen, I can't promise I can get you on TV, but I can promise that I will pitch your story. If it is because you have a kid that has a size 15 size shoe, or a kid that could play the fiddle like nobody's business. And I would say that to every person every day. And that was a goal. And I think that those are the same type of things that I brought over to the dark side, as you mentioned. I just try to find something every day. I want to tell a story every day. And so I would meet somebody, shake someone's hand, and I still, my pre-COVID-19 successes are the fact that I still did that. I would still reach out and I would still talk to somebody every day. And as a solo practitioner, you know that every 10% of every part of your day has got to be looking down the road, because you don't know how long it's going to last, right? And so you've got to be looking for that next get. And so I think, I mean, sure, I can say I was fortunate enough to get in the Cirque du Soleil group. You know, I've represented 6 of their shows in 7 different markets, you know, and I've worked for big time national companies. I'm not a huge guy, Marty, you know, I'm not a huge at all, but I'm lucky enough to have made the connections and the relationships throughout the career to be able to tap, you know, I can tout, I've worked for Dunkin' Donuts. I can say that I work for Cirque. I've worked for Bayer Advance, which is a national weed killer organization, you know, not an organization, but a product. I've worked for Blackwood Dog Food. I've done a lot of Valspar paints. I've done a lot of big stuff, but I think what I think is my favorite part of pre-COVID is I've really, and I don't want to say like I champion the small guy, but I'm local everywhere, man. I've got relationships with people all over, and I can pitch products from Bangor to Tampa to Birmingham to Boise, and I have Sacramento, and I have, you know, and it goes all back to the fact that I could talk my way out of a paper bag pretty well.
It's a great talent to have, Rob. Rob, I got a quick digression. The handing out of the business cards. Do you think that business cards are going to come back? Are we going to be able to hand out business cards anymore?
No, probably not. No, I've still got the original stack. I've still got like 700 of my, yeah.
Right. I just, it's just funny.
I can't get rid of them because it's got the home number on it. I've got my home phone number on it, right? I can't get rid of them.
Right. Okay. Rob, they don't cost that much money, but nonetheless, I'm just talking about being close enough to be able to give a card. But that's a good segue into where we are right now.
Mhm.
What are you doing for your clients during COVID-19?
Well, the truth is, and I don't know that a lot of people are different, that this has kind of kicked a
Wait, the
lot of
truth.
people.
Wait a minute, Rob. A PR person doesn't say the truth is. You've been saying truth all along. Go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
um,
God.
but a lot of us got kicked right in the gut, right? And so I have a couple retained clients, 2 or 3, and they are nonprofits, and so I work with them because I want to, not because I have to, for obviously financial reasons. So a lot of my stuff that I do is media relations around events. So it's the boat show, and it's Cirque du Soleil, and it's the shows that are coming down to the Sprint Center down in downtown Kansas City. So there was a point in about 4 days, like in maybe it was early May, where I officially lost like $35,000 because all these events which had been postponed, finally canceled. And so I had all this time. And so I sat down and I thought about this to myself. And this was also, I'll go back to the TV thing, is I had to find a joy. I had to find my joy every day. And some days, in TV, it was harder. It's about, getting a good interview, getting the scoop, but a lot of days it ended up making sure that my tie matched my socks, right? You had to find something, and it doesn't change anything because that's still happening today. If my joy today is walking the dog. But I've always said this, Marty, I said that public relations is not about that first word. It's all about that second word. It's about the relations, and that's what I do. And so I've been lucky enough to have pretty good friends. I mean, I know the weekend anchor's dog's name at the CBS station. I know where the retail reporter lives that works the Star. She's right down the street from me. And she drives a Wrangler. I know all these things because I've made these relationships. And so I thought about it, and I turned, honestly, if I could buy stock in one word, the word for 2020, it'd be pivot. If I could buy stock in one, it would be pivot. So what I did was I pivoted, and I figured out how, without making money, I am now serving different clients. I'm not serving the clients that are paying me. I'm serving the clients that I go to the well for every time. So what I had to do is I had to figure out how I could still, because what I do know, all this uncertainty out there, what I do know is that news comes on at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., 9 p.m. I know that. I know the paper comes out every morning, and I know they have to feed that monster every day. And so my clients became my reporter friends. So I had to find stories to give them, because the reason that they still take my calls or my texts or my Facebooks or my tweets or my secondary tweets or my third emails is because they know I'm going to give them something good, right? And they have to do their job still. And so my clients became the reporters. And so I had to find things to give to them. Now, I'm not getting paid for it, no. But in 3 months, when this is all over, or 6 months or 10 months or whatever the case is, they're going to remember me helping them out. And so it ended up being stuff like my church. It was right around Easter, and this is a big weekend for religions all across all kinds of religions. And our priest, we didn't have a YouTube channel, so he was really, I don't want to say he wasn't depressed necessarily, but he just wasn't doing well. So what we did was we talked to the local media about how this Catholic church is preparing for one of the biggest weekends, and how they're not passing the plate, so donations are down, and we got the approval from the diocese and all this stuff. And then what we did, Marty, when the church was too big, so it was very cavernous, so we started a YouTube channel in a little spot, and I'm pitching all this. I'm doing all this work on the front end, but I'm also pitching this at the same time. And then we put pictures of parishioners on the backs of the chairs in the tiny church, and so then the priest actually had someone to look at. Now, they're not talking back or smiling back, but that was just enough for the reporter to go, huh. And then once again, boom, kick in the door, boom, boom, boom. And so that's what I'm doing for my clients, is actually then now I found new clients that I'm actually supporting them that way. I don't know if that's kind of a roundabout answer.
No,
I don't know if you've heard that from
good.
anybody else yet.
Well, I think a lot of people are pivoting. But I think a lot of people are really are saying they're kicking back. Definitely pro bono work is up during COVID, for sure. But I'm curious though, with your expertise in media relations, and you've talked about the second, the second part, the relations part.
Mhm.
Are you seeing during COVID a change in the media? I mean, here in Vermont, we're a minor media market, but the paper is struggling. It was struggling before COVID, but reporters are on furlough. There's talk about papers, question whether the paper's going to make it beyond the year, that kind of thing. Are you finding in your, in your sphere, change in just the ways, the media that are available to you to tell your story?
Oh, sure. I think there was something that was out there. There was like 30,000 journalists that were either furloughed or fired at one point, like probably a month ago, and that obviously, makes my pie so much smaller for people to go to. The fact of the matter is, and the reporters are sick of this even more so than us. We have the ability to turn off our TVs and not watch the news. But the fact is that these guys still have to do it. And so knowing that I've been there, I was the one that was standing on the highway saying the bridges and the overpasses freeze first. I get it. I get you have to beat that dead horse time and time again. So it's telling the same story in a different way. And so I have a client that is a nonprofit that does they had do forensic interviews for kids that have been sexually abused or have seen really bad things like homicides or domestic abuse or those things. And so the fact is that you've got to really kind of, and their numbers are way down. Their numbers are so far down. And they got into it and they said, well, because everyone's at home and they're not at soccer camps in the summertime and they're not at school. And so there's no mandatory reporters out there. Now, so the trickle down's a real thing, man. And so it's a real deal. And so you just got to find those things. And then you still have to, like kid, you have to help out your new clients with this new way and then they get credit for coming up with a great way to tell the same story a different way.
Right.
And so, but yes, there are less people out there and it all has to be about COVID. I have a popcorn farmer who does, it's vertical integrated and he plants a seed, harvests it, the whole deal on the store shelves. And the reporter's like, it's a great story, but how is it COVID related? Okay, I'll come back to you, and
Yeah.
it's just, but to your point, yeah, it's a scary thing, the amount of what's happening here. I've got friends that have 4-day weeks now because they're forced to take a third day off, but they're not getting paid for it, and those are markets all across the country. And,
Right.
I mean, we'll get out of this, right?
Right. Well,
Right.
yeah. Well, all right. So let's go there. So Matt, we are going to get out of there. I mean, I'm confident that we're going to get out of there. Um, when we get out of there, what do you think is going to be the role of PR? Do you think PR is going to change? Have we, are we going to now be invited to the table before everybody else? What do you think is the role of PR, when we emerge from COVID?
So I think that there was a poll not super crazy long ago that didn't put PR people higher on this list of like the way the perception of the public. We weren't too much higher on the list than politicians and journalists. And we get lots of bad things that are thrown our way as far as like they're hacks or they're just spin mongrels or whatever. And I think, unfortunately, I think there's a little bit of truth in that. And I think that we as PR professionals have such a huge responsibility, same like that guy, same thing as that guy, a huge responsibility because we craft stories. We have to do that for our clients to solicit whatever we're trying to get across. We are able to do those things. And I think that responsibility is huge. And so I think it actually, we have probably a bigger responsibility post than we did pre, because people, I mean, that's our job, and whether we believe it or not, we craft messages. And so I think, with what is the Spider-Man phrase, with great power comes most good responsibility or whatever. So that is important as well. So we can't take that for granted. But I think that the truth is, once again, there it is that our job becomes even more important to be able to tell a better story, to craft a better story. And because of that, hopefully people are apt to not believe that necessarily, but get over where we are to push forward and to believe there's good still out there and that things are going to happen. I mean, I don't know if
Right.
that's altruistic or whatever or blah, 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 but I do believe that our job is even more important now than it was before.
Uh, and I agree with you. I think the one thing that I've been giving a lot of thought to is at the same time that we're dealing with COVID, we're dealing with a major social issue in terms of racial inequality. I mean, that is really, when you look at it, if it was just COVID, that would be one thing. You're
Right.
the reporter who says,
two big ones.
make it. Now you got this other one, and frankly, I think in a post COVID, once we get out of COVID, we're still going to have to deal with the racial inequality stuff, and I think that's really where PR people are. We're part of our job is to see the trends. Part of our job
Sure.
is to be ahead of the curve. Just like when you ran down to beat your father to the newspaper, that is a good background story for what PR is all about. So
Sure.
so we need to be ahead of those stories. So I think that's going to be something that PR people are going to be called on as well. So
yeah, that just opens up. Those are just new to your point, new opportunities to help spread the word one way or the other, or whatever, however it works. But yeah, I think that is a second huge story that is going on right now that that where journalists are going to want to cover, forced to cover all those things and just finding different angles and make it happen.
Yeah. Anyway, Robb Yagmin, thank you so much.
That's it.
President of
That's
it,
all
my
I
friend.
get?
That's it. It's it. This was your 22 minutes of fame.
Okay.
President of PSPR in Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you so much for being on PR Benefits. I'd also like to thank Rich Melanson at BCTV for helping me edit the show. Rachel Cohn, my daughter, who's a professor at Ball State University, art professor, for her technical assistance on the podcast. And also for Twin Musicom for the music Hat the Jazz, which you hear at the beginning and end of the show. It's catchy and it sets the tone for the show. I'm Marty Cohn in Vermont. Stay healthy.